Hello and welcome to a brand new Arseblog Arsecast right here on Arseblog.com. How are you? Hope you're well. Thank you very much indeed, as always, for being here. This morning we're going to talk about our 0-0 draw with Nottingham Forest at the City Ground last night. Not the most exciting game you'll ever see, and obviously one in the current context which feels a bit, I don't know if anticlimactic is the right way of putting it, but certainly as Liverpool run away with the title and we, having lost to West Ham and dropped a couple more points last night, even if I think in context last night's point was not the worst in the world, fall further behind. The season that we all hoped for, of course, has not transpired the way we would have wanted, but that is to come in a couple of minutes' time. I did just want to talk to you a little bit about today and what today is. To you, it might be nothing much, nothing special, just a regular old Thursday, another day at work, whatever that might be. For Arseblog, though, it is a bit of a landmark day. It is the 23rd birthday of Arseblog.com. This day, 23 years ago, in a small town called Vilanova i la Geltrú, outside of Barcelona in Spain, I sat down at my computer and I uploaded the very first Arseblog post to Arseblog.com. Obviously, a lot has happened in the meantime. I can't really go into all of it because there's, 23 years worth of stuff on the pitch and off the pitch and on the site and off the site. But here we are. And here you are, hopefully, listening to this. You will remember on last week's Arsecast, there was a competition for those in the UK to win some beer from Indie Rabble Brewery, and we'll give you the winners of that contest a little bit later on. But I didn't want to just do a contest or a competition for people in the UK. I wanted to open it up to everybody. So what I did was I asked you just to send an email with voucher in the subject line and let me know where in the world it is you were emailing from. And I think it's fair to say that we have had emails from basically everywhere. I haven't gone through them all to check and like a list of all the countries in the world and then check them off, but they have come from everywhere. And that, in 23 years, is the thing I think that I am most proud of and happiest about, is that as football, the Premier League, Arsenal has become more and more global, so too has Arseblog, and so too has the reach of this website and this podcast. And all I've ever wanted to do is create stuff, write stuff, talk about stuff for other Arsenal fans. And at the end of the day, that's all I am. I'm just an Arsenal fan like you or you or you or you, whoever you are, wherever you are in the world. I'm no different to you. I'm an Irish guy who was born in England at a time when Arsenal had lots of Irish players. And then I ended up living in Spain and I set up a website and moved back to Ireland, and I didn't really know what else to do with my life or my work. So I poured everything I have into Arseblog, and it is what it is now, and I'm very happy with it. I'm very proud of it. I'm very lucky and privileged to be doing what I'm doing. But at the end of the day, I'm just a fan. I feel very privileged to be doing what I'm doing. But I don't take it for granted, and I don't take your role in all of this for granted, because without you, whether you listen or whether you read or whether you're a Patreon member or not a Patreon member, whatever way you contribute to this community, and it is a community, I'm very, very grateful to you for that. I will say Patreon is important to us because we've got a great team of people who work here at Arseblog, bringing you all the podcasts, all the coverage of the men's team, the women's team, the youth team, everything that goes on at the club. And they get paid, but they don't get paid because we have advertising. We've got no advertising on the website at all. We got rid of advertising years ago. Arseblog is almost entirely member funded, which means we are not beholden to any kind of editorial influence. We do not need to do clickbait or rage bait or any of the worst stuff that you see online these days. We have a commitment to high standards and to quality, and your Patreon subscriptions help us do that. So if you aren't already a member and you think, hey, Arseblog is useful to me, I like it, I can deal with $6 a month, because that's all it is, $6 a month plus VAT where applicable. That's kind of out of my hands. And that's a price point that hasn't changed since 2018, by the way. As everything else in the world has got more expensive, Arseblog has remained the same. You can sign up at patreon.com/Arseblog. That is patreon.com/Arseblog. Not only do you support everything that we do here, but you also get lots of extra bonus content as well. You also help us pay it forward and give a bit back. I think when you have a platform like Arseblog, you have to try and be a positive influence in the world as much as possible. That's why since 2022, we have donated over 150,000 euros to good causes. That is something that we will continue to do as well. And I would urge anyone who's in a position to help, whether it's personally or through your business, whatever it might be, if you are in a position to help, and it's something you've kind of put off and put on the back finger, please have a think about what you can do, what you can give back to the world, and how you can help, whether that's at a community level or beyond. I think there are people in this world who are well positioned to use their resources in ways better than they do. So it's up to the rest of us to try and fill that gap as best we can and do what we can, whether it's a little, whether it's a lot, to try and help the people in the world who are a bit less fortunate than the rest of us. The final thing I want to say today is a huge thank you to all of the Arseblog team, who I am very, very fortunate to work with. We've got great, talented people who ensure that all the Arsenal content you need is ready and available to you 7 days a week, weekends, weeknights, whenever we're playing, off-season, all of it. They play a huge part in what it is that we do. So Tom, our tech guy who keeps everything going, Andrew Allen, James on the Arsecast Extra, Tim Stillman, we've got Jason who works with Tim doing video content for Arsenal Women, Jamie and Aidan who also work with Tim on the Arseblog News women's side of things, Lewis Ambrose, Phil Costa, we've got Hatta, John, Billy, loads of Arsecast guests who give their time, people in the past like Scott, like Tim from 7am Kickoff, who've all contributed such a lot to Arseblog and to help us get where we are. And if I've forgotten anybody, I really, really apologize. It's been 23 years. You know, the old memory's not what it was. And that's not an understatement, let me tell you. But anyway, my sincere and deep thanks to all of you. And again, thank you to you guys for listening, for reading, and all the rest. I will give you the winner of those vouchers and those beers a bit later on in this show. For now, though, let's talk a bit of football. That's why we're here, after all. And with me to pour over last night's game and beyond from the Stadio podcast, it's Ryan Hunn. Hello, Ryan.
Good morning, Andrew. Happy birthday, I believe. Well, not you personally, Arseblog.
Yes, Arseblog. Not me. Our birthdays are quite distinct.
Is it 23 years?
Mm-hmm.
That is unbelievable. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And can I just say, actually, I don't want to do this,
okay,
but can I, on behalf of all the listeners, long before I was doing football stuff, Arseblog was, and it still is, I have to admit, it's every morning, read the blog, listen to those podcasts, and that has been, it's actually really strange that you and I have become, I'd say friends, Arsenal friends,
sure,
since we've, since I started doing stuff as well, but it's actually really strange to think that you and Arseblog have been quite a big part of my life for quite a long time. So on behalf of all of the listeners, who I am sure feel the same as well, and the readers, congratulations, thanks for what you do, and yeah, happy birthday.
Thank you very much. And thank you for being part of it. And thank you for being here this morning. It's a big day for you guys as well over on Stadio. Yeah. Episode 500. This is coincidence, by the way. I only just found that out a second ago as well. So 500 up for Ryan and Musa. Congrats. Yep.
And thanks to you as well for getting Musa on and pushing Stadio, and especially when we first started out. It was very, very cool of you. And I know a lot of people have found us via Arseblog, so that's really cool.
Well, that's it. You've got that kind of, Musa has got his own affiliations, shall we say. But, you as the Arsenal guy, and to be fair to Musa, he is, would you say Arsenal sympathetic?
I think he's Arsenal adjacent, even though Arsenal he's not adjacent. He's a Manchester United fan. But if, for example, there was some kind, Musa's quite into sci-fi and stuff like that. If there was like a movie where Manchester United were sucked into a footballing vacuum and just vanished. Which, to be honest, I think, judging by what's going on there at the moment, quite a few Man United fans wouldn't have a huge amount of issues with. But I think he'd probably, if he was going to have to pick another football club, I think he'd probably pick Arsenal. So.
Yes. Yeah. I think so. Okay, well, people can listen to episode 500 of Stadio a bit later on after they've listened to this one, and we're here to talk, Arsenal in general, but I think specifically we're talking the night after a 0-0 draw with Nottingham Forest at the City Ground, which, on paper, going into this game, actually, the amount of people, that I've been talking to who are like, oh, Jesus, I'd take a draw here, given what happened against West Ham and how poor we were against Leicester. Nottingham Forest, going pretty well.
Third in the table.
If you gave me a draw beforehand, I'd probably bite your hand off, that kind of thing, which, might tell its own story about us. Also tells a bit of a story about Nottingham Forest, though, as well, and the season that they're having. Nevertheless, despite that, and a point of view I understood, because I have to say I did feel a measure of trepidation going into this game for all the reasons that we'll get into, and I'm sure people understand already. To come out with a 0-0 draw, the logical part of my head says, we're in second, they're in third. That's not a bad result away from home in the context of everything that we've been going through, etc., etc., etc. But, you can't control how your heart feels. And my heart was just a little bit like, guys, because, you not just have scored one goal. That's all. Half-time, right? I went and I was looking at the clips of what was going on in the other games. I saw the two goals that Manchester United conceded to Ipswich, both of which were fucking ridiculous and absurd. And I think I said to Phil Costa, I was like, could we just get one of those? Can we have one of those? It doesn't have to be a 30-yard screamer in the top. Can someone just make a mistake and let us score and we can win this game 1-0? So, as I said, my head was like, okay, I can live with that draw. But at the same time, I'm a little bit kind of...
Yeah, I mean, it would have been great to see Calafiori's post come off Calafiori's shot come off the post, ricochet off Sells, maybe bounce, hit the bar, hit the post again, hit another Forest player, and then just go in. And that would have been it.
Or it could have just gone in, just inside the post.
But, I thought, why not just kind of string it out a little bit more? It's like one of those old comic movies where you're seeing people's eyes dart across the screen. It's just like, don't, where things are going. But I felt like this game was so, in a strange way, about half time I was thinking, it's so typical that Andrew's got me on for this one, because it felt like I'd been through all of the stages of Arsenal belief in, pre-game where we are. You're like, man, this is going to be like 3-0 Forest. We're going to get absolutely destroyed here. And then starting off, and Forest had a couple of chances, you're like, oh God, Hudson-Odoi went down that right-hand side. You're like, oh no, this is going to be a long night. Calafiori gets booked really early. Yeah, this is nailed on, down to 10 men, 2-0 defeat. Everyone's going to be talking about Arsenal discipline again on Sky Sports News for the next 3 weeks, and it's just going to be noise. And then Arsenal started to get control of the game, and I thought, hang on a minute, actually we're looking really comfortable here. And then I started doing maths, being like, well, if we win here and then Liverpool, and I was like, what the fuck is going on?
What are you doing?
I know, but I couldn't help it. It's like that thing in Bug's Life, with the moth going towards the light, and it's just like, I can't help it. That's just that's what happens, I think, when you're out of the title race, but you're still doing maths. And I think actually the cool thing about last night, in a way, without sounding too much like I'm trying to cope with the result, I think it really does. Hammer home the point that it's done, really, bar an absolute miracle. And I think that that's quite a peaceful place to be for the rest of the season, because especially in the moment when you look at that forward line, and it's interesting that I think on Match of the Day they were talking about it, and even maybe after the game on the punditry, the mainstream punditry now has started to talk about Arsenal's injuries and compare them to Liverpool. I think it was it Stephen Warnock on Match of the Day or Danny Murphy maybe said, if Liverpool are missing that a front four, they're not in the position that they're in. I was like, all right, if we've got to that point, then people are finally getting it, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that is, you know, Musa and I talk about this on Stadio quite a lot, and I know it's borderline impossible now in, I think, today's world anyway, but especially in today's football, like top-level football. I think a culture that is a little bit more accepting of seasons that, do you know what? This just isn't it this year. And that's actually fine. It's impossible to maintain your expected level every single season, every single year, no matter what that level is. And I think that sometimes you see it in the NBA quite a lot. I think that if teams have major injuries, they're a bit like, it seems that people are a little bit more sympathetic, you know, and being like, well, actually, you know, they've been pretty hurt all year.
Yeah,
I think is kind of where they're at. And I think that if there was like, I think that if people did step back, because yeah, we had high expectations this season, but I think if we can maintain this and get some people back, I know maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit, at the end of the season, we could look back on this and be like, do you know what? Considering everything that happened, this could end up being quite a beneficial season going forward if we can escape, you know, the rest of the season in a fairly positive fashion.
I know where you're coming from, and certainly in the pre-game press conference, Mikel Arteta was saying there's no team who's dealt with these injuries and had 5 red cards and played for 10 men with so many for so many minutes who are second in the table. And I don't know if that's true or not true, but I can understand the point he was trying to make there, right? There's been a lot of adversity, self-inflicted or otherwise. We've had to deal with those things, and the message that he's trying to send, obviously, to the fans and to the players is that, you know, we are struggling, we have problems, but we're resilient and we're still second in the table. And while we haven't kept pace with a Liverpool side who are, you know, there is an element of you've got to just fucking give them their flowers because of what they've been doing, as painful as that might be to acknowledge. They've been very, very good and they've won a lot of games and they are where they are deservedly, aside from where we are, right? But I think there is this idea that if there was nothing at all that we could have done to alleviate some of the injury problems, I think there would be a greater understanding among the fan base of the problems that we have as a team, which I think were evident certainly against Leicester and West Ham, maybe a little less so last night. We can get into the performance now in a minute. The sense that we had done everything possible within our power to ensure that we didn't find ourselves in a situation like this, I think, you know, beyond the crackpots who just want to be angry at everything, most regular, normal people would say, okay, what can you do? There's no, I mean, you can't. But I think that sense that we didn't do that, we didn't quite push the boat out as far as we could for whatever reason. And, you know, I don't really want to make every podcast and every discussion about January and what we did or didn't do last summer, because I think that's boring. We've talked about that and it doesn't need to be reiterated every time. But I for me, that's sort of the what underpins a lot of the frustration, and maybe a lack of sympathy for where we are because of that sense we did not really do as much as we could to deal with the situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where I should clarify. I think my sympathy splits, right? So the sympathy is with the playing staff and the players. You know, that kind of squad. That squad is where the sympathy is, because you can see also just in certain patterns of play, you can recognise a side that's kind of a bit like, man, we're like quite knackered, and there's not much else we can really do here, and it's not really working. I feel like the players and Mikel Arteta are the people who basically just get the most shit whenever things go wrong. You know, I heard you and James talking about the Martin Odegaard thing the other day, and I'd actually not really seen that. And I couldn't believe it as someone who's not really, you know, on Twitter or whatever that much anymore at all. I miss a lot of the noisy online stuff, and I genuinely couldn't believe that there's like a thing going on apparently about Martin Odegaard. Like, I just couldn't believe it. So yeah, I mean, Ian did a bit on Wrighty's House the other night where he was really kind of he was basically just saying like the board could have done more here to support this squad, especially in January. And I think that what we're expecting sometimes in January isn't what we need. You know, I don't think, for example, Sesko or Vlahovic or Nwaneri or anyone like that was what we needed in January. I think it was just options. Like, you looked who Forest brought off the bench last night, and I was like, I would take any one of those players on the bench at the moment just in order to bring them on for the last few months of the season.
Yeah.
And I heard you guys also talking about the Villa situation, and that's a prime example. Like, I watched a ton of Daniel Marlin for Dortmund, and as good as he can be, when he left Dortmund, no one was really too sad about it. It didn't feel like they'd lost a major component of that squad.
And
However,
and Villa still added Rashford and Asensio to their squad.
And I was thinking, do you know what? Actually, though, I'd definitely take him at the moment, because it would be great to have someone like Daniel Marlin, who he knows the club as well and is experienced, to come on or to even start games instead of having to rely on Ethan Nwaneri. So I think it's more about the window that I would have loved this January would have been the Jorginho Trossard window. That kind of window.
Sure.
Which maybe people would have been like, yeah, kind of underwhelming, but at least it's a few players. And it just allows us, because it's all accumulative, right? It's like, it means that you can't take people off, or people have to maximize their minutes, and that then builds up to fatigue, and if they can't play their way out of form, they can't be taken out. There's no options there. And I think it's just all about, that was the window that I wanted. And I think so my sympathy is still with the players who are kind of going through it, and also with Arteta. I feel like, me kind of ranting and raving on Stadio, which I don't really do too much about Arsenal anyway, but I feel like, basically what I'm trying to say is I feel like I can separate that sympathy. So I can sympathise with this group of players, but the board are the people who feel like really should have identified that this squad needed something. And I don't know whether that's because of what's going on with like Eddie's departure and stuff like that. Yeah. But that is what it is.
All right, well, look, let's talk a bit about last night then. And Mikel Arteta's talked about trying to find solutions to the problems that we have. I don't know if you saw his post-game interview on TNT Sports, where he was basically being asked, what's the problem with the goal scoring? And he's like, oh, Jesus Christ. I mean,
I wanted to talk to you about this.
I've answered that question like 100 whatever times in the press conference, and like, it's pretty fucking obvious. Why can't we score any goals? Or why are we struggling to score goals? Well, it's because we don't have Kai Havertz, Bukayo Saka, Gabriel Martinelli, and Gabriel Jesus. We've got a 17-year-old who is physically feeling the strain of being thrust into action. You talked about Ethan Nwaneri, cramping from minute 45 in this game. So we have to take that into consideration. His talent is one thing. His potential is one thing. The physical side of it is clearly something that he is still coming to terms with a little bit, right? And I don't even need to go into the discussions about how we've overplayed players or what burden there is on players in terms of minutes, et cetera, and people are like, well, playing Nwaneri every minute of every game. We've got a central midfielder as our striker. Even Nuno Espirito Santo last night was asked, well, you played three at the back against Brighton, you won 7-0. What was the thinking here? He said, well, Arsenal have Merino as a striker. They don't have a striker, so we don't need the extra defender. And I don't even think that's him, like, sticking the knife in. It's just
smart.
Exactly. It's just a perfectly normal, logical, reasonable explanation for the reason why he picked his team. So the other option available to Mikel Arteta is Raheem Sterling. We can maybe talk about his cameo in a moment, but you can understand why he didn't start. So the question about why can't Arsenal score goals, or why are Arsenal struggling to score goals, is a pretty easy one to answer. I felt like last night it sort of demonstrated a couple of things to me. One is that, behind that front three, I think we're solid.
Yeah, really
we could do with more creativity, for sure. But defensively, we dealt with everything that Forest had to offer, really. You know, they had some moments here or there. There was a Raya save in the second half. But, you know, they're a very direct team, which is, you know, football parlance for Route 1. They just fucking get it. They hoof it up the pitch and they look for uncertainty in the opposition defending to get players forward and take advantage of that because they've got good players. You know, but someone like, I saw a lot of discussion pre-game about, Anthony Elanga versus Riccardo Calafiori. Oh, he's going to get killed. They swapped their wingers. Hudson-Odoi obviously gave him a problem and he got that yellow card early on. And I want to talk about Calafiori in a minute. But Elanga over on the other side had 11 touches of the ball in the entire game, made 4 passes. Jurriën Timber, 6-7 tackles, like nothing got past Jurriën Timber. Yeah. Saliba and Gabriel dealt with Chris Wood. They won all the aerial duels apart from 2 that Chris Wood won, and they didn't do anything for Nottingham Forest in that sense. So, you know, defensively, we were there. You know, that midfield trio, you could say, is that something you can tweak? When you've got Jorginho, Rice and Odegaard, and, you know, Odegaard is struggling. There's no two ways about it. Jorginho didn't really have much of an impact. Rice had some good set. Is that an area of the pitch where you could add something a little more? For sure. That's something we've got to consider. But behind that front three, I thought we demonstrated that you know, we are a team that is really solid. Nottingham Forest have scored a lot of goals. They catch a lot of teams out. And we dealt with them really, really well, apart from maybe that opening couple of minutes that you talked about where there was just a little bit of stress. And like you could hear the frustration from the Forest fans all the way through that game as we dominated possession. They get it. They give it back to us. The frustration in the crowd is like, come on. You know, that was, I'm not going to say that was good from us, but I think in the context of where we are and what we're struggling to do, that was part of the frustration of West Ham, wasn't it? It was like, don't give a stupid goal away at least. And we did that, but we didn't do that last night.
Yeah, I think I know it's all ifs and buts and stuff, but if the Calafiori one goes in and Tierney's header goes in and that's the only difference in the game and it's 2-0, everyone is talking about what a response from West Ham. What a commanding, assured performance from Arsenal. Actually, considering all the circumstances, that's a really, really great away win. And those could have easily gone in. I don't think they're howlers. Tierney's one was super close, but he's done really well to get there. I thought he actually did really well when he came on, Kieran Tierney. But yeah, I think the opening couple of minutes was just West Ham hangover, you know, and it was a difficult game to follow up the West Ham defeat with. But also, I don't know, I think it was on Match of the Day where they were saying that Arsenal were vulnerable in the counter-attack, and I just completely disagreed. I think allowing teams to occasionally have a counter-attack, which Forest maybe had 4 or 5 tops. I think allowing them to do that, just because a team is counter-attacking, I don't think it means you're vulnerable on the counter-attack. I think the way that you deal with the counter-attacks determines whether or not you're vulnerable on the counter-attack. Against West Ham, we were super vulnerable. And against Forest, we just weren't. Like, even the one where, like the one that they were all going on about Saliba's last gasp tackle on Chris Wood, it was also one of those, like, you know when a keeper makes a save for the cameras?
Yeah.
Saliba is so comfortable in that situation. And I mean, that's a compliment to him. It's that never once, actually. It felt like I felt a lot more calm than the commentary, like, reflected, if that makes sense. They were like, "Whoa, my God, oh my God, Saliba," and I was like, actually, that looked pretty calm from his. I know it was like last ditch, but that was the most dangerous situation of the game, and he never looked like he broke a sweat. So yeah, I agree with you. I think behind the front three, Arsenal looked extremely comfortable. I think the problem that we have in midfield a little bit. I quite like Jorginho coming in there last night.
Yeah, I've got no problem with Jorginho either. But
I think he gave us a little bit more. I think in games like that, he maybe goes under the radar a little bit. How important he is for recirculating the ball in that position, and I think that just gives you a little bit more time and a little bit more opportunity to exert some pressure on the opposition, which I think Arsenal did really, really well last night, and they couldn't really do it against West Ham, even though they had possession-wise quite a lot more of the ball. I agree with what you're saying in terms of the creativity in midfield, but I think this is just, again, like, if Arsenal, for example, could rely on Raheem Sterling to start and deliver, then you could potentially move. I know we're talking about playing him even more instead of resting him, but you could move Ethan Nwaneri a little bit more central to give Martin Odegaard a little bit of a break. And then you have a little bit more creativity or ball playing options, let's say. It's just every injury or every lack of option in each position just has such a massive knock-on effect. Like we were talking, I think with the Odegaard thing as well, you know, he's been missing two parts of that key triangle down that right-hand side, which I think affects his play hugely. I think the relationship that he built with Ben White and Bukayo Saka, those three, there was a reason why everything went down that right-hand side.
Yeah.
It's because Ben White is a bit of a unicorn as a right-back. Bukayo Saka is... this season when he was fit, you know, the top three in the world in his position, and that's not even a controversial take anymore. And prior to the injury, and also in a few moments since, but not as much, Martin Odegaard is one of the best people in his position in the world, and people were talking about how much of a steal he was when we got him. So you take two of the three out of that, and one of them's coming back, probably came back a little bit too early, I think, still, because we were so desperate for him to come back. Then... yeah, you lose a little bit of that fluidity and that function down that right-hand side. So, again, it's just like, wow, if we had a couple more options to maybe do something a little bit different, then you wouldn't end up with, as you know, I don't want to kind of like dunk on him, but I never really thought I'd see Zinchenko coming on in midfield at the end of February in a Premier League season.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at, you know.
That is where we're at. I think what was interesting about last night was... the role of Riccardo Calafiori. You talked about the yellow card, and look, everybody went, uh-oh, yellow card after 2 minutes.
See this fucking movie.
Uh-oh, that's not ideal. I did notice when the Forest player, I think it was Milenkovic, got booked literally 2 minutes later, nobody thought, right, we're going to get this guy sent off. But we have this, obviously, we're scarred a little by what's happened this season in terms of red cards, right? So when Calafiori gets booked, we're like, oh, Jesus, just Hudson-Odoi's going to do something and he'll just get a split second and then we'll be down to 10 men again. But what I found fascinating or interesting or really encouraging about Calafiori was the way he reacted to that yellow card. I know there was a little moment where Hudson-Odoi ran beyond him, and there was that. It was one of those situations that could easily have been a penalty, but wasn't a penalty. But his role when we were in possession, it was like he got forward in this sort of the old-fashioned inside left position, if you like, to sort of get into the box and support Mikel Merino, who was the 9. For want of a better way of putting it, right? That shot you mentioned, I was trying to think of which goal or which Arsenal goal it was it reminded me of. I was sort of half in mind of Dennis Bergkamp against Spurs. You know, the one where the ball, I think it was Righty played the ball across from the right, and he took the touch and curled it in. It was a bit closer in, and obviously, but I remember very distinctly a Robert Pires goal. Yeah. Almost exactly the same. I think it was against Blackburn, but my memory's playing tricks on me right now.
Also the hair and also, and
yeah,
kind of
I mean there was that.
It's not too dissimilar.
Not too dissimilar, but that sort of a game like last night, right? If it ends 1-0 with a moment of individual brilliance, you kind of go, yeah, that's football. That's what happens. It was a fairly even, stayed game, but like one guy came up with something brilliant, and that was enough to win all 3 points. Calafiori was really, really close to doing that. But what's sort of more interesting to me about what we did with him was, for all the questions to Mikel Arteta about, like, how are you going to score more goals? What are you going to do with your attack when you've got these problems? You've got this central midfielder playing as a 9. What is your solution to this? His solution was, I'm going to get my rampaging left back to get up and support the attack and get into the box and put him in positions where Nottingham Forest do not expect him to be. So I think that was obviously part of Arteta's plan last night. I completely understand why at halftime he said, I can't risk it. I cannot risk another red card. Even though Calafiori got through 43, 44 more minutes without being booked, I completely get why he was stone cold terrified of going down to 10 men again. So he put Kieran Tierney on. I thought Tierney did fine in the role that he plays. And he plays it differently, obviously, from Calafiori. He didn't really do what Calafiori does because I don't know that he can do what Calafiori does, right? And that's not a criticism of Tierney. They're just different kinds of players. But it did have an impact on us. And I guess that is sort of a wider question, isn't it? Like, why is the withdrawal of sort of hybrid left-back centre-half from your team having such a big impact on you in the attacking third, but trying to think outside the box and trying to think of ways to deal with the attacking problems? That is what Arteta came up with. And unfortunately, at half-time, he had to kind of shelve that, which I think is a bit of a shame.
Yeah, you know, when he was saying how Mikel Arteta's thinking of ways that he can come up with an attacking threat. You know that bit in The Matrix when they're like, upgrades? It's like Mikel Arteta's just like, how can I do this? It's like left-backs. Everything is left-backs. Yeah, but it's interesting because on the left-back in an attacking sense, I'm not sure if we spoke since or if it was before, but I was at the PSG game, and I think Odegaard had been injured at this point, so he was out, and we started with Calafiori and Timber. And I remember at one point in the first half, them both being on the edge of the opposition box, and I was just like, this is fucking amazing. Just like, this is so space age. I mean, it's not really space age, but for Arsenal, it looked so space age because we'd been so controlled. And there was this like sweet spot that we actually hit a little bit while Odegaard was out, where we had this hyper athleticism and technicality all across the pitch. You know, he could basically say the only two that didn't fit into that category were like Gabriel and Saliba, and even they're pretty amazing. So, but yeah, in that sense, last night, I think I agree. I think Calafiori gives you such a. He's essentially like three positions in one, right? And I know that, you know, we're at a point of the season where you don't want to be doing things for the first time as much as possible. But there was part of me that thought, I wonder if maybe he could have pushed him forward a little bit, you know, because he's basically there anyway. If you just remember, and if the positions that he's going to get caught in for a yellow card are going to be if Forest break. But he operates such high positions anyway. I was wondering whether maybe you could move Trossard a little bit more central, because I think Trossard's actually he's been pretty good the last couple of games, I think, compared to what some of his form this season hasn't been as great. But there was such a gap in the middle of the front line. I was like, can we move someone there and maybe keep Calafiori on? But then I think, again, like we were saying before, you know, when we're talking about Zinchenko in midfield, I think at this point in the season, do you really want to be doing stuff that you've not done before? But although saying that, we're essentially doing that with our front line anyway, because Mikel Merino, bless him, is very much kind of like, you're probably wondering how I got here. And it's just because I came off the bench and scored 2 goals. Yeah, you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden he's starting the next 2 games, which is very much like, I mean, I love it in theory, but it's very rare that stuff works out. Yeah. You know, you have the 2, he comes off the bench, he scores 2 goals, and everyone's just like, well, this is it. This is like a new signing up top. And then that's it. They're never going to score a goal up there for the rest of the season.
Mikel Merino's quantum leap was into Leicester City's ground.
But like, I feel real sympathy because I think the players are trying their best, and I just feel like Tierney coming on, it's one of those, like, he didn't do anything remotely wrong at all. We just looked different. And I do wonder whether, and this maybe goes to a little bit of the post-match interview as well, because I was going to say to you about this, that there's a level of stress that Mikel Arteta gets when he looks at the person giving him an interview, and I start to grimace a little bit because I'm like, I think he might punch this guy in a sec. Like I think he's going to punch him. He might punch him, and he did that a few times in this interview last night, where the guy said something, and he basically wanted to say like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yes.
You know, like, what do you, like, but there is part of me that sometimes thinks, I'd love him to just go a little bit more Ange Postecoglou, which might sound sacrilege on an Arsenal podcast, but if they said, what's the issue with the goals up top, then Mikel Arteta, how great would it be if Mikel Arteta just went, got Mikel Merino up front, mate. That's it. Like,
I don't have a striker, mate.
Got no bloody strikers, mate. But, yeah, I've kind of gone all over the place there trying to figure out a solution, but I feel like in short, I would have loved Calafiori to stay on the pitch in some capacity. I just think I don't think Mikel Arteta can take another red card. I just don't think he will actually. I just don't think he can do it. And I think that
Was he right to be sensible there? Was he? Because you're right? Sort of on a hiding to nothing, aren't you? That like Calafiori was having an impact in the attacking third, so you lose that, and I think some of that was evident in our second half performance, and we can talk about a couple of the other changes now in a minute. But at the same time, if he leaves Calafiori on, and there's like do you remember the one Tomiyasu got sent off for at Crystal Palace?
Oh yeah, the
second yellow, right? The first yellow was like I think 2 Arsenal players had gone to take a throw in, and then someone threw it to Tomiyasu, who stood there for like a couple of seconds, and then the cumulative time wasting saw him get a yellow card. He wasn't time wasting himself, and then there was like a turn on the halfway line with, I think it could have been Jordan Ayew, who just sort of turned away from him. There was barely even contact, but because of the way the player went down, he gets a second yellow card. It's an absurd, both yellow cards are absurd on the night, but if there were a moment like that for Calafiori in the second half, where the Forest player buys a foul, makes it look worse than it is, and he gets a second yellow, Arteta's an idiot for not doing something about that, for letting that happen. You know, you've had all these red cards. How many more lessons do you need? Etc., etc. So that is I think he was...
Who'd be a manager?
Loath to take Calafiori off, but really felt like he had no choice, because you cannot... So that you can't trust the players. And I'm not saying it's all about the officials, but we know that, you know, it doesn't take much to get a second yellow card in the Premier League these days. So I think the sensible decision was take Calafiori off. The consequence of that was that it did have a little bit of an impact on us from an attacking perspective.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering that if you bring Tierney on, there was a game where, was it Miles Lewis Skelly had just come into the team, and Arsenal made a change. I think Tierney came on and went left back, and they pushed Miles up.
No, I think it was the other way around. I think Kieran Tierney came on and went left wing.
That was it. That was the other way around. Yeah.
It was a home game.
Was
I can't remember.
Spurs? It wasn't Spurs, was it? Because Miles came off.
I can't tell you just off the top of my head. I'll look at it, but I do remember what after the game, it was really weird. It was Declan Rice after the game. It was during January. Declan Rice after the game said, "Well, we've brought Kieran Tierney on in the front three. I'm pretty sure the club are going to do some business in the transfer window."
Record scratch.
Yeah.
But I thought that kind of changed. I think I quite like changes like that, because I expected him to maybe push in that change to push Miles up a little bit and have the security of Kieran Tierney behind him. That's what I think he. I mean, it's so easy for us to sit here and me to be like, oh, hey, I would have brought Tierney on and just kept Calafiori on.
I think it was Spurs. Yeah, it was the home win against Spurs.
And then Miles came off at the end and did the whole clap thing. Yeah,
that's right.
I think that would have allowed us to have a little bit more, of that attacking fluidity that I think we did have quite a lot of, like in terms of everything apart from having a shot on target.
Yeah.
But the build-up play was pretty good. Calafiori was a key part of that. I think, I think it's so tricky. I'm trying to think of a definitive way that I feel about it, and I'm just so sympathetic with the situation that Mikel Arteta had, because I think it was just like I said, I just don't think he could have dealt with another red card. I don't think the club. I think we maybe have to appreciate that there's been so much noise in the last month as well. For different things, and a lot of it was around Miles Lewis Skelly, actually, and I think we have to be careful with how that affects him. But there's been so much noise around various different situations, and especially with the red cards this season, that I think just having a few weeks of it just being relatively calm, and maybe that might, now that people have accepted that the title race is kind of done, maybe that will help that. I think it's always a little bit more charged when so much is on the line. Yeah, I think just getting out of there without a massive talking point, is probably quite a good thing. So I get it from Arteta, and again, I don't think Kieran Tierney did anything wrong at all, but Arsenal definitely lost a little bit of that kind of fluidity.
What else we had on the bench was obviously or is a topic for discussion. Zinchenko coming on as the left 8. I thought he had almost no impact.
Yes.
I didn't think he got on the ball. I don't think he put himself in positions where he could receive the ball well enough. There was that moment where he went through and pulled it back for Odegaard. I think it was Murillo made a brilliant block on the line, and then I think Odegaard's second shot was blocked. I have to say to you this morning, if that ball had hit the back of the net and then the flag had gone up for the offside, I think I would be, verging on inconsolable. It's hard enough to score a goal. I'm glad it didn't go in, because I would have hated for it to have been ruled out, But I didn't think Zinchenko gave us a great deal. And Raheem Sterling then on for Ethan Nwaneri, who Arteta said, struggling physically. I thought there was there was a bit of variance. When the team comes out, there's always discussion about is he picking this guy, he's picking that guy. And, I saw people saying, well, I would have started Sterling, kept Merino as the guy, to come off the bench and maybe make the impact that he did against Leicester. Maybe lightning can strike twice in that sense. But I saw the 15 minutes from Raheem Sterling, and I completely get why he doesn't start him. Mikel Arteta is a manager who I think speaks at face value for the most part, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to players, he's always going to talk about them positively in the public domain, because that's what you do. You don't just, you don't say things about a player publicly when you're going to need them, whether it's in December, whether it's January, February, wherever. At some point between then and the end of the season, you might need a player, and you don't want to have that guy downhearted, low on confidence, feeling like he's a spare wheel, whatever it might be, right? So what he says about players and what he does with players can often be a little bit distinct. So you can get a better idea of what Mikel Arteta is thinking about a player by whether he picks him, whether he starts him, whether he uses him off the bench. And I think over the course of this season, we have come to understand that Mikel Arteta and Raheem Sterling, what he says about him and what he does with him are quite different things. And I think it's easy to understand why, when every time he gets on the pitch, it looks like a real struggle for him.
Yeah, and I think this season has been one of the things that's made me probably more sad about the squad. Because I remember being quite positive about the signing. I remember saying it on here. I still actually remember your face when I said it. But because his signing at the time, and the reason that I felt more positive about it, because it reminded me a little bit of you only have guys in the NBA, they kind of sign on a veteran minimum contract, and they've been around the league a while, and they've had loads of experience, and they're obviously not at the level that they once were. But they can contribute a small amount of game time, and they're really good around the dressing room. And I thought that this group would have really benefited from someone like that with Raheem Sterling. And I actually remember saying, at the time, if it goes well, or it wouldn't surprise me if he was available to just be around to sign for cheap, to do him on a permanent. Now that's completely gone.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's such a shame to see someone who was so good just not be able to do it as much as and you can tell that he wants to. I don't think, for example, his work ethic or his attitude or anything like that has been remotely questioned at Arsenal since he joined. And I think it's quite strange, actually, if you think about it, as someone who hasn't really had any connection to the club before and has played for 3 massive rivals, joins on a loan at the later stage of his career and actually gets quite a lot of support from everyone. I don't see, maybe it is there online, but I don't see it, some of the criticism that's leveled at some other players really randomly. I've seen Kai Havertz get more shit this season, in terms of vitriol, than Raheem Sterling, because I think there was just an acceptance maybe that quite soon into his Arsenal, I don't want to say career, but the time when he joined on loan, that maybe he can't do what we would have hoped that he would be able to do. And I think there's a lot of respect on what Raheem Sterling's achieved in his career and what he's endured actually as well, especially from the UK media. And so we really wanted it to work. And it's got to the point now where I feel like we're having to play him more, or maybe we're looking for solutions and we're looking for him to be a solution that no one would have expected him to have been, if that makes sense. Because I'm trying to think about how best to use him at the moment and what I would do. And I keep falling back on actually starting him, which sounds bizarre. But I don't think we've got much option at the moment. I don't think... I have to confess, I'm really worried about how much we're playing Nwaneri.
Yeah, me too.
And I'm worried about it, not necessarily this season, but I'm worried about it when he's like 28. Because...
God bless you for thinking that far ahead. I'm just thinking about the end.
But I just feel like, when you've seen these players before, and we've seen them, they retire. And I think Raheem Sterling is actually you've got an example there of someone who burst onto the scene so young, played a hell of a lot of football, and was too relied upon too soon in their career. Now, I think Nwaneri will be fine because I don't think, for example, I don't think him or Miles Lewis-Skelly are going to play the amount of minutes consistently that they've played in the back half of this season next season. And if they do, it'll be hopefully by then Arsenal's squad will be a little bit more full in those areas of the pitch that they can swap in and out and they're not having to play 90 minutes relentlessly without any break. That's the thing. There's no opportunity to rest players for a game or two here and there, which is, the only probably positive thing about Miles's red card. Is that at least he could not play the game. Yeah. But yeah, again, with Sterling at the moment, if you look at the squad that we have, until Bukayo Saka comes back, like, I do think I would rather start Raheem Sterling than have to bring him off the bench in a game that we're chasing.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's...
Because I feel like the options that we do have now with someone like Ben White coming back, or if Calafiori starts on the bench, or, I would like to see a little bit more of Jorginho at the back end of the season in certain games, because I think he just gives you like we talked about, that kind of circulation that we need, like ball circulation. I think Nwaneri as well, coming off the bench for 20 minutes in a game that we need a goal against a tired back four, he is going to be a lot more effective than Raheem Sterling is in that scenario. So do we? And we're not. This isn't the season from three seasons ago now, where we would come out and just like blitz teams early on. So is it worth going for a little bit more of conservative control until we need to change the game than having someone like Nwaneri, who will be more decisive in the latter stages of games if you bring him on against tight defences, because you've seen that.
I can see that logic. I absolutely can. I think...
It's wild that we're having to make that decision.
Of course.
That's kind of a reality of where it is, and that's where I think we're at the moment. I think I would, because I think that Champions League is the priority now, I think. I don't think we're going to win. Ironically, I think this squad was set up more for that. Actually, yeah. I think that the way that Arsenal have been playing games this season, the Champions League was such a big opportunity until everyone got injured. But that is an opportunity still for a little bit more of a positivity for the rest of the season. Like I heard you guys talk about the other day, as long as you get through PSV. I think that the injuries and the negative side, the stuff that has happened to the team this season, when it happens, it kind of seemed there was a bit of a wave of it where it was never ending with the Premier League. And I think that just takes a bit of a toll. I think you can use the Champions League as a bit of an outlet. And I would definitely rather just try and start Raheem Sterling in those games and bring Nwaneri off the bench, I think, especially until we get options back.
It really is sort of trying to find what is the least worst way of using Raheem Sterling, which is, like you say, he's played for City, he's played for Liverpool, he's played for Chelsea. I don't have any ill will against him personally or anything like that. I feel sorry for him. I kind of, that aside, I do think the idea of making sure you have something on the bench is an important consideration for Mikel Arteta going forward. If that means starting Raheem Sterling, I'm a bit torn on it, though, because I don't think you get anything from him when he starts, and you get nothing much when he comes off the bench either. But if perhaps we demonstrated that with an imperfect front three, we can control a game like we did last night against Nottingham Forest, and then in the final 20 minutes you can sacrifice, or final half an hour even, you can sacrifice Sterling for Nwaneri or something like that. I can see the logic in it. I just also see play your best possible team from the start and try and win the game, and then control it, in the final half an hour. And so it really is. It really is imperfect until such time as we get anyone back, whether that's Gabriel Martinelli, who I think is first up. It's not going to be until after the interlull, though, and Bukayo Saka, who, even when he's back, we are going to have to we need to reintegrate him very carefully into the team. It can't be a case, hey, Saka's back 90 minutes every game. No. That just can't be done. It shouldn't be done.
But I think that, for example, Ben White coming back gives us a real opportunity to then reshuffle stuff down the left-hand side. Because, for example, you can then play Jurrien Timber at left-back if you need to, instead of Miles Lewis-Skelly. And then I think, for example, Miles, I was talking to a couple of people about this the other day, about Miles's future. And I think that Miles is such a... you can tell why Mikel Arteta loves him so much already, because he's essentially like what Calafiori is. He's essentially like, he gives you three positions in one, really. I think his future will definitely be in midfield. So when there are more options at left back, that allows you then to... Miles Lewis-Skelly becomes then another option for midfield, which then means that you have another option, you have more options to rotate. The benefits of just getting someone back like Ben White, it shows you how troubled this squad has been in terms of just personnel. So I think I hear what you're saying about the starting your best team. That would be a no-brainer for me if, for example, the best team was doing the job. The fact that it's not,
that's fair. I'm
like, well, if we're not really, I mean, what's that? Back-to-back games without scoring for the first time. What was that?
Since 2023, I think.
Something like that. Okay, so actually,
I think it was the Fulham.
Long.
Was it the Fulham and West? Oh no, we did score in that Fulham game, so I don't know.
Yeah, if Arsenal were scoring freely and it was still kind of, Mikel Merino had like 9 in 3 games, and he was like putting up like messy numbers from 2011. I'd be like, yeah, cool, let's keep it as is, but it's not. So
yeah. Can we not just Arsenal go to that universe? Please? I'd like us to just go into that universe, please.
Yeah, it would be great. Huh? Yeah. Wow, Mikel Merino, goal machine. I texted you last night, didn't I? Was it about half time? And I said, I think this is going to be what like every game for the rest of the season is going to be like. So if it's going to be a fucking grind, then like let's at least kind of just have an option to make it less of a grind for the last 20 minutes if possible. So yeah, again, massively long-winded answer, but I keep thinking about just like, I keep falling back on being like, I think I'd start Sterling especially until Martinelli's back, and then he's back in that right-hand side.
Well, obviously, just to sort of finish us off here, there are a good few days now for Mikel Arteta to work with the team ahead of Tuesday. We've no weekend game. We've got an away leg in PSV. Sterling is an experienced player, can do it in Europe. Is it beyond the realms of possibility that during these few days he might consider other things, or is he going to be, well, that's too much of a risk at this point of the season to change the shape, change the formation? Can he get more out of what he's got? He got a little bit more out of them last night than he did against West Ham. Is that an encouraging sign? This is a big game, obviously, against PSV. This is an important... Well. Yeah, it's going to be tough, because you can be quite sure they looked at Leicester, they looked at West Ham, they looked at Forest last night, and will go, okay, we're going to do a bit of that to frustrate Arsenal, And, we've got some players who can hurt them on the break, and maybe we'll maybe we'll find a way through, at which point it becomes very difficult. This is a huge first leg for Arsenal. Can't go 3 games without scoring. He's got a lot to think about between now and then, doesn't he? And the options, as we keep saying, are sort of imperfect, whatever he decides to go with.
Yeah, I would love it if Mikel got a bit weird.
I don't know if that's in his nature, though.
It's not, though, is it? Someone needs to, get him some gummies. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, hang on. Because between now and Tuesday, can we get Mikel Arteta on an ayahuasca trip? And he'll come back and go, guys, the universe opened up to me. This is what I'm going to do.
Sorry, guys, I just got the official UEFA team sheet. It says Calafiori's playing up front. I'm just like, Mikel Arteta comes out holding a white Russian looking like Jeff Bridges in The Big Lebowski. It's like, yeah, man, just got Ricky up front. It's all right. I thought about it. This is where I landed. I don't know, man. I think we both know what will probably happen, which will be the most conservative. That's not a diss on Arteta. I just think he's very risk averse. Let's say risk averse instead of conservative. Risk averse lineup to make sure that we're still in the tie. I think Mikel Arteta will take 0-0 in Eindhoven. Genuinely, I think he would take 0-0, and that gives us an extra week, to get hopefully some people a little bit more fit and ready. And I think he will have more faith in us being able to win the tie at home. So it's just about, but like I say, I think apart from that 1 or 2 moments probably in the West Ham game, I think defensively we look pretty good. So I don't think that's a huge concern. I think we'll be able to deal with a lot of what PSV have. It's just about making sure that we don't do anything silly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I would love Mikel Arteta to think, to just. I mean, he's worked with Pep for so long, right? Pep wasn't that Pep Confidential, and he'd just lock himself in a room. I don't know. Maybe it's something like. Have you seen Conclave? I watched that the other day.
Not yet.
It's
Not
like
yet.
Mikel. Everyone's at Colney's just there watching this little chimney, waiting for the smoke to come out. Like Mikel Arteta's figured it out. Do you know what I mean? That'd be so good.
Yeah.
We'd be like, all right, we've got to leave him in there. He's not figured it out yet. And then he comes out and he's got the solution. But I don't know what that is. I mean, I just think it might be something that we haven't really thought of, or it might be now he's got a couple more left backs back, tweaking the midfield a little bit, putting Miles Lewis-Skelly in there. I don't know, man.
I don't know.
We could speculate all day, and it would probably be exactly the same starting lineup as it was last night against PSV.
A tweak here and there, but anyway, let's hope whatever he comes up with, it is more effective, and we manage to stick that ball in the back of the net, which ultimately is the thing we all love to see. All right, we better leave it there. Ryan, congratulations again on the 500, and we'll catch up soon.
Thanks, man. Congratulations on the 23rd birthday.
Thank you.
Take care, Andrew.
Thank you very much indeed to Ryan. You can find him on Blue Sky. He is at ryanhunn.bsky.social, ryanhunn.bsky.social. And of course, as we mentioned, he's the co-host of the Stadio podcast, which is celebrating episode 500 today. You will find that in all the usual podcast places. Now, last week we ran a couple of competitions on the podcast. The first was to win one of 3 cases of beer from Indie Rabble Brewing Company. They are run by Arsenal fans. They very generously gave us some cases of their beer to give away. The random number generator has picked out the following winners: Luke Rowland, Nick Robinson, and Steve Ponting. Well done to you guys. I'll be in touch. I'll get your details, and we will get those cases of beer sent out to you. For anybody else in the UK, you can get 20% off any order at the Indie Rabble Brewing Company website by using the code Arseblog20 at checkout. That is Arseblog20. The website is indierabble.co.uk, indierabble.co.uk, and you'll also find a link to that in the show notes. The other competition was to win a £100 voucher for the Arsenal online store that you can spend on anything you want, whether it's a jersey, a tracksuit, a hat, whatever it might be. And And I thought, given the day that's in it, and it's Arseblog's birthday, and I just talked about how we have this community from all over the world, let's give more people a chance to win. So we've got 3 of those vouchers. The first one goes to Martin Culver. He is in Canada. Well done to you. We've got Derek Goza, who comes from Ghana. And we've got Rosie Dowling, who is all the way in New Zealand. Well done to you. How about we do one more? Fuck it. Let's just do one more. Random number generator, do your thing. And the winner is Kevin Mazige from Massachusetts in the USA. So well done to you guys. I'll be in touch with you by email probably tomorrow, and I'll get your details and we will get those vouchers sent out to you. Thank you to everybody who entered the competition. Thanks to everybody for being here, for listening, for taking part, for being part of this fantastic community. Sorry we don't have more prizes to give away, but we'll have more competitions in the not too distant future, I'm sure. Right, we will leave it there for now. It's a bit of a strange weekend, obviously, because there is no Arsenal game. The Arsecast Extra, which would normally take place on Monday, we can't do because James is away. So what we're going to do is the Arsecast Extra on Wednesday, which will be the morning after the PSV game. We're away at PSV Eindhoven on Tuesday evening, so we will have an Arsecast Extra for you on Wednesday. I think what we will do is make our Patreon preview podcast available to everybody on Monday by way of stepping into the podcast gap, if you like. So we'll make sure that you have something to listen to on Monday ahead of the game against PSV, whether you're a Patreon member or not a Patreon member. As I said earlier, if you'd like to join us, you'd be more than welcome. Patreon.com/Arseblog. For now, though, folks, take it easy. Thanks as always for listening, and we will catch you on the next one. Until then, cheers. Bye-bye.
Arsenal Football Club have today applied for the 2024-25 season to be annulled due to the fact that they signed Mikel Merino from the wrong quantum realm. Chief Executive Timothy Lewis told this newsreel exactly why.
He should have been banging him in like Lionel Messi in 2011. Bang!
Premier League have responded with a statement of their own this afternoon, telling the Gunners to, and I quote, "Fuck off."